Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Coffee and Questions. Sorry, we had a couple of weeks break there because my voice failed me. It's still feeling pretty scratchy, so we'll see how we go today, see if it holds up for me. But sorry about the delay, a bit late. The internet's not working this morning and a bit of carnage going on in our house as well. So yeah, I'm definitely a bit late, but hopefully that's given people enough time to go and grab a coffee and join me this morning for Coffee and Questions. Good morning, Emma Reimer. All right, there's a bunch of people jumping on Insta, so welcome. Thank you for joining me. I've got a really good question come through from one of my Ironman athletes, and so I thought I'd talk about that today. He wants to know how to lose weight while still maintaining his energy levels for Ironman training. I think he's doing Port Mac. I think he's doing Port Mac in 10 weeks now. I think we're away from Port Mac because it got postponed to September. And I think this is quite a common thing for people doing Ironman training. Everyone wants to lean up because I guess, power to weight, we always talk about power to weight ratio. You want to be as light as possible, but also really strong. And I guess, for an Ironman, you've got to carry your weight across that distance all day. So the lighter you are, the better. But I guess as a sports dietitian who's been in practice for, more than 13 years now, I see a really delicate balance with that. So it's really important to, be lean, but you also need to make sure you're super strong at that weight. And I find that the stronger you are and the more muscle tissue you have on, the better than just trying to just get skinny. Like the message shouldn't be just get skinny. I think that was probably kind of the message. She her photos from, I don't know, sort of 2014 or earlier to like 2018, 2019. What she actually did was put on a whole heap of muscle and then she started winning. So I think it's really important to understand that, you want to kind of be as lean as possible for racing, but there is a delicate balance between that and being too lean. And also we want to be really strong at that weight too. So I've got a couple of good tips and good strategies for you around that. I think it's something I see really commonly in private practice. Everyone wants to come and lose a few kilos, but there's a few important considerations for that as well. So if you are on Facebook, give me a holler and say hi. I can see a bunch of people that have jumped on Insta now. Good morning, Ironman Dan, and Steph's here. And Emma, you can't be in my live video. I think you might have accidentally pressed that. Good morning, Kazla. All right, so a few tips for you for how to actually, I guess, when Berkey asks for like losing weight, I assume dropping body fat. So I'm going to talk about that, I guess. I'm not talking about just losing overall weight, including muscle. We're going to talk about, losing body fat and maintaining those energy levels right through Ironman. So I've got a few thoughts and comments for you around that. So my number one tip, good morning, Liv, for trying to lose fat while still doing Ironman training is to make sure you're eating strategically. So one of the things I bang on about all the time is that you shouldn't eat the same thing every day. Like you should have some scale in what you're doing so that your food matches training load. So you want to eat differently on a rest day versus a really heavy training day. And then like a double session hard intensity day, you have a different strategy for that too. So one of the things that I work with my clients is they get a detailed menu plan or meal plan to help them scale that and have a periodized approach across the week. So I often see people come in and their food diary is eating the exact same things across the week. And the first thing I do is change that. So if you want to maintain energy levels for training, doing that anyway, even if you're at the body composition that you want to be at, then that's something that I would do with you anyway. But if you're trying to drop body fat and still hold a really high level or high number of hours of training a week, then it needs to be very, very strategic, because otherwise you'll fall into a hole. We don't want to go catabolic. We want to make sure that you are still fueling training and you're still laying down muscle tissue and recovering from sessions properly, because that's what's going to make you a better athlete. Otherwise, you run the risk of being injured and getting sick constantly and just breaking before the start line. So it's really important that you have a really strategic approach if you're trying to do that, rather than just trying to scale back. Like, that's not an important, like, it's not a good sort of strategy if you're trying to lose weight, because you will get injured, sick, broken. Good morning, Liv. All right, so that's my number one tip, is that making sure you have got a strategic plan for what you're trying to do if you're trying to drop body fat while still building to an Ironman. And that I change my plans throughout the Ironman build too. So that's why I only do packages for Ironman athletes now, because there is so much that you can F up with your nutrition in an Ironman. You can kind of get away with things for sprint, maybe Olympic distance as well. 70.3 things start to rear their ugly heads if they exist, but Ironman, you just can't, you can't get away with anything. So I will only work with Ironman athletes over a longer period of time now, because there's lots of stuff that I want to do with you heading into an event to make sure that you have the most successful day in the office come race day. Good morning, Beck. So yeah, I guess my main tip is eat strategically, and then have a dietitian, a sports dietitian, write a meal plan for you so that you have something to follow. And I find triathletes in particular are good with a plan and you follow it, because that's how you work. You know, you like to make Training Peaks go green. So I set my meal plans up like that as well. So you just know exactly what you're eating day in, day out, and it changes. It's not the same every day. So that's really important. Now, when I try and get athletes to drop body fat in an Ironman build, I really try and let training drive the body composition change rather than chase it. And I think that's one of the important things to consider when you are dropping body fat, is that if you're eating well and you're doing a good job of fueling training, then you will naturally drop body fat if you're eating properly. Without having to really be aggressive with a calorie deficit and trying to really, chase body fat loss. If you are eating, to plan, that's done by a dietitian, and you're being strategic so that what you're eating every day is different to match your training loads, then you will naturally drop body fat anyway. And I find that happens a lot. Like, people often come to me eating the same thing every day, or they also come to me eating like not enough. And sometimes if I increase food in certain days that really need that extra fuel, then you do a better job of eating to support training, and that helps to let the body relax and also not play hungry catch up for multiple days after if you haven't done a good job of fueling big training. That helps you to drop body fat as well. So it's this whole big melting pot of stuff going on. Which is why I think it's really important that you have a dietitian, a sports dietitian, write a meal plan for you, because all of that back end thinking happens without you even knowing about it. Good morning, Johnny O'Leary. So let training drive that body composition change rather than trying to chase it, but you need to do that with obviously eating properly and having some strategy around that. My other tip for dropping body fat in an Ironman build is to try and do it earlier rather than later. Now, you want to be trying to drive some body fat loss and some fat adaptation. Like, you want to get your body used to burning fat as a fuel. You want to do that early because that helps you through your Ironman as well. If you can rely more on fat stores than just throwing heaps of carbs at the system, you'll have a better day on the day as well, if that's you. Good morning, Joe, and good morning, Beck. I'd suggest doing it earlier rather than later. So you don't want to be chasing your tail right at the back end of your Ironman build, trying to drop weight then when your training level is at its peak, and you should really just be focusing on fueling for performance at that time. So you want to do your body fat loss a bit earlier in your training build, which is again why I work with Ironman athletes for a 20-week program, because we do that stuff early. And then at the back end of training, when you've got all your good race nutrition practice sessions, the big long bricks and stuff, we're not still trying to drive a whole heap of body fat loss then. A little bit might happen naturally, just with that overall training volume. And that's that, let training drive the change. But you want to do the fat loss stuff a bit earlier, so that in the back end, when you just need to be like stoking the fire, so to speak, that, yeah, you can just throw way more fuel at you, that rather than still trying to restrict what you're eating. My voice is already failing me. You probably can't tell, but it's starting to get scratchy. All right, so yeah, lose the body fat earlier rather than later. My other tip with this, and that I see quite commonly, and I had this question asked a little bit, is that you shouldn't actually be race weight all year. You want to have, again, like food, have a bit of a periodized approach and have some ebb and flow to your weight across the year. Like, you don't want to be Ironman lean for 12 months. You want to have some sort of small fluctuations in your body composition, so that you can, race at your peak physical state and fitness, but then it's okay to gain a couple of kilos after that. Now, I don't think you should have big fluctuations. I'm not talking about like 5 to 10 kilos of weight change. I think that's too much. But, a few kilos here and there is totally fine. And I would encourage you, if you've just done an Ironman, if you've just done cans and you dropped a few kilos, like, I'd probably put them back on. It'll naturally happen potentially, depending on how loose you are with your food afterwards. But yeah, making sure that you're not race weight all year. And your race weight is, something that can evolve over time as well. It doesn't have to always be a set number that you're always aiming to achieve. As athletes who are in the sport for longer, you do, if you eat properly, like I see my athletes, they build muscle over the years. So if I do their skin folds, then they actually get leaner, but their weight is a little bit higher than, when they first got that lean. Good morning, Tan. And Journey to Fitness says, similar to the OPT model of training, pyramid training equals pyramid nutrition. Yeah, there you go. I'm not familiar with that model, but it sounds similar. So always having, I guess, I'm always strategic with my nutrition. You never have the same plan that you follow forever. It depends totally what you're doing. And yeah, having some ebb and flow to the year as well. So make sure that you aren't race weight all year. It's okay to lean up a bit for racing and then put a couple of kilos back on, but not big 5 to 10 kilo fluctuations like that. That's like not good for our health, diabetes risk, heart disease risk, etc. So National Sport of Medicine, Journey to Fitness said, yeah, I'm not sure what that is. I'd have to Google it. Are you in Australia or you're overseas? Lost my train of thought. Yeah, 5 to 10 kilos is too big a fluctuation. So making sure that you don't come and see me for an Ironman prep and need to lose 10 kilos, like, that's not so fun either. So I'm working with an athlete now who does that and has done it twice. And this time we're not going to do that. He's going to try and maintain his weight closer down to what his Ironman ideal race weight is. A couple of kilos up is fine, but we're not going to have a massive 10 kilo deficit to hit next year for Ironman. Yeah, Journey to Fitness said United States. That's why I'm not familiar. I'm down under here in my own little Australian bubble, but I'll Google it and have a look and see what it is. My other tip for body fat loss with Ironman builds is slow and steady wins the race. And I think a lot of people have really high expectations of what their weight loss should be, losing a couple of kilos a week type thing. And there is no way you can maintain your energy levels for Ironman training if you're trying to lose that much weight. It would also be impossible to drop only body fat if you're trying to aim for such an aggressive weight loss. And like, when we're trying to lose weight, we're just trying to lose body fat, right? We're not trying to eat away at our muscles, because we need that for our strength, particularly on the bike, and particularly not so much Ironman, but the more draft legal style racing, you want to have much more strength than just the time trial type style racing. So when we're losing weight, we only want to be losing body fat. We don't want to be losing muscle. And the more aggressive you are with trying to drop more weight quickly, the higher the risk of eating away at your muscles. So a good sort of slow, steady weight target is maybe 0.5 kilo to 1 kilo a week maximum. And it might happen a bit more quickly to start with. Like you might find that if you go from whatever you are eating to a dietitian approved meal plan, then you might find that the first couple of weeks you do lose 1 kilo, but then it slows down. And then we also let training drive that adaptation and that change too. So slow and steady weight loss is key for making sure it's fat loss that's happening, not muscle, and also maintaining your energy levels through that build too. So I don't want to see somebody that's trying to lose 10 kilos in an Ironman build. That's not so fun. That's why I think you should have a tighter range of body composition fluctuations across the year rather than big gains and losses. And I find a lot of Ironman athletes use Ironman to do that, to bring their weight down. So they have an all or none mentality where they're on and they're doing Ironman training and they lean up heaps, and then they're off, and, you know, beer's happening, coffee and banana breads every day. Like the habits don't get fixed by doing an Ironman. And I'm actually going to talk about that as a topic for another day, just around those habits. Like an Ironman doesn't teach you to eat well. Good morning, Marie Ferguson. What are you doing here? And Laura's here too. All right, so Alison Ryan said on Facebook, some people put 10 kilos on in their first feed post Ironman. I've not seen that happen personally, but often with an Ironman, if you're in a real hole, you might have dehydrated yourself by a good few kilos. So that first feed, you could put on a couple of kilos just with rehydrating. And think about also in an Ironman, you have just emptied your glycogen fuel tank, really. Like you don't have any carbohydrate stored in your muscle anymore if you've gone hard enough. And so just by eating carbohydrate over the next couple of days, you'll gain 1 kilo or 2 just putting that glycogen back in the fuel tank. So Marie said, hello, bored in lockdown, so I thought I would tune in. Welcome, Marie. Hopefully you learned something about triathlon nutrition. Alison Ryan said, Macca's chicken nuggets. Yeah. So when I write Ironman race plans, I always write their recovery nutrition in there as well to make sure that the recovery boxes are ticked properly first before you go to Macca's or the pub. So I think that's important to note. Beck said it took me a week to even eat properly again after my first Ironman. Yeah, so totally depends how that first Ironman goes too and how your gut goes. But we know that really high intensity exercise blunts your appetite too. So a little bit of force feeding can't go astray in that first window if that's you, because your body's really smart. It's going to catch itself up later. It's just going to start sending out all your hunger hormones, and then you'll be just like a bottomless pit, like open the floodgates and you won't be able to stop eating once that happens. And that's the body being really smart and trying to catch you up from the hole that you've just put it in. Marie said, great advice. You're welcome. And Beck said it took 2 years to eat Vegemite again. So yeah, she did Vegemite on her first Ironman. And I see that often is that you OD on a product and you kind of get flavor fatigue and then you can't face it again. So it often happens with things like sports drinks. So I often get people to rotate through a couple of different flavors so that they don't get fatigue with that one flavor of sports drink. And then even what they do heading into race day is potentially a different flavor to race as well. All right, my voice is starting to die, so I'm going to try and wrap this up quickly so I don't lose it all together again, because otherwise we'll be off again next week. All right, so where did we get up to? So talking about slow and steady wins a race. And then I guess with body composition change, particularly with athletes, try not to use the scales as your measure for tracking that. They're a really shit measure of body composition change, because the scales fluctuate all the time based on your hydration status. So whether you've drunk more or less, how much sort of stuff is in your gut, like how much food and bulk you've eaten through your whole gastrointestinal system, how much fiber you've eaten, and that can kind of bulk up what's in your colon too. So that can change. Plus, you know, fluctuations with hormones across the month for females. Our weight can change by a kilo or two just with hormone shifts. And then you've got how well you've slept, and a whole heap of other factors. So the scale number is really not a good indication of what's going on. So I like to track body composition change with skin folds. And that, I don't have my calipers here actually, they're in the office, but that is a really good way to see what's actually happening at the body fat level, rather than just a number on the scale. And I see often, particularly females, you jump on the scales and the number's the same, and you get super disheartened that you've been working so hard on training and your nutrition and nothing's changed. And then you do their skin folds and they've dropped 5 or 10 mils of skin folds. It's just that because they've been eating properly, they've been able to drop body fat and maintain or even put on a little bit of muscle. So don't rely on the scales when we're talking about tracking body composition change. So the gold standard for me is a DEXA, which is a body composition scan sort of once a year for my athletes, which measures your whole body in it, and like it's a DEXA machine. So it's what you might jump into if you do like your bone mineral density, different scan, but similar machine. And it tells you how much muscle tissue you are, how much bone tissue you're made up of, and also how much body fat you're made up of. And so it's getting a sense for how much of those things you are made up of. And then skin folds do every sort of 4 weeks, and that's more fine tuning, tracking your body composition, and it measures the distance, like the distance in the fold of the body fat that sits outside of your muscle. So I'd suggest getting a trained anthropometrist to do that for you. So look for somebody that's ISAC accredited, ISAK, and that means that they're trained to the international standard to do skin folds properly, so that when you repeat the measure every 4 weeks, that you know that that data is, there's always a little bit of noise with any body composition measure, even DEXA, but not like making sure that that noise is the smallest level possible, so that you can actually accurately track that change. So that would be my sort of tips for how to actually monitor how your body composition is going through Ironman, and make sure that you are actually dropping body fat and not dropping muscle, because I change meal plans based on skin fold results as well. So again, why I do packages, because all this stuff happens to set you up for success, to make sure that your Ironman race day is the best that it can possibly be. Journey to Fitness, see you later. They said, thanks again for sharing. Have a wonderful day. You're welcome. All right, if there's no questions, I'll add them into the chat box now, and I'll grab them. Otherwise, I might try and wrap up soon before my voice fails, because I have a fair few talking things I need to do for the rest of the day. But they will be my top tips for trying to lose body fat during an Ironman training build. So just to summarize quickly what they were. So making sure you eat strategically. You have a sports dietitian approved meal plan. You let training drive that change in body composition rather than really trying to chase it. And I think that's important for making sure you lose fat and not muscle. Try and do it earlier rather than later. So you're not chasing your tail in the back end when you should be really just fueling for performance. You shouldn't be race weight all year. I think that's really important. You should have a bit of fluctuations with your weight, but not big ones, not like 5 to 10 plus kilos. They should be shorter, smaller fluctuations. And that slow and steady weight loss wins the race. It shouldn't be really fast. And then also, I guess, finally, if we're talking about tracking those changes in body composition, make sure you're doing that with something like skin folds, with somebody that's qualified to do so, and not doing it with the scales. So I'm an ISAC accredited anthropometrist. I have to do a whole heap of CPD and a number of profiles every few years to keep accredited. And I've done thousands of skin folds. So I'm actually going to do another session on like what they are and what to look for when you're looking for somebody to try and do them for you, so that you know that they're doing it properly. All right, so I haven't seen any questions come through. If we've got a bunch of triathletes online and you haven't got it yet, make sure you download my free triathlon nutrition checklist. It's a 50-point checklist to see how well you're nailing your nutrition. And I want you to go through it. And if you're in the Dietitian Approved Crew Facebook group, jump on there and let me know what your number is. And if there's any particular areas that you need to work on or have any questions around like how to do that. All right, I might jump off before my voice fails, but thanks for joining me. Sorry I was a bit late today. And thank you for asking that great question, Berkey. And I will see you next week.